Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hava Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Ballabha Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Junatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Welcome, everybody. Great to see you here. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmahai Shri Gurave Namaha. So let's look at the Srimad Bhagavatam, because just besides looking at it, we'll hear from it. By hearing the vibration of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're hearing from the spiritual world. How's that? That's why you came, right? You want to hear something from the spiritual world. And just by hearing Anukramishruti, step by step, one advances in devotional service. That's pretty nice. Just by giving oral reception. Satam prasangam vamavirya samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana kata tajjoshana rashu apavarga vartmani shadaratir bhaktir anukramishruti. It just follows. Anukramishruti. One thing follows after the next. If you hear in the association of pure devotees the sound vibration of the spiritual world, then step by step your shraddha thickens, and the Sri Brahma Samhita says, Yadrishi, Yadrishi, Shraddha, Siddhir, Bhavati, Tadrishi, that as your Shraddha thickens, you thus advance in devotional service, thickening of faith. When you without faith, Krishna says you're lost. Ashradhana Purusho, Dharmasyasya Parantapa. Is it Ashradhana Purusho? Oh, Krishna. Ashradhana Purusho, those people who lose their Shraddha end back up on the path of birth and death in the material world. Aprapyamam nivartante mrityu samsaravartmani. There it is. Ashradhana Purusho dharmasyasya parantapa. No, I think I'm transposing. No. Ashradhana Purusho. Second line. Aprapyamam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani. Mrityu samsara vartmani. Now that's not a good vartma to be on. The path. Mrityu samsara. The path of birth and death repeatedly. It's one flows into the next. That's what samsara means. It's flowing from birth to death, birth to death. And mrityu samsara vartmani, that's the path in which you lose your bearings, and it's more than losing your bearings. It's not about being agnostic, it's about being atheistic. There's an envious feeling one can develop towards God. So when one is developing more and more faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shraddha, and then one begins to awaken his or her relationship with Krishna, which happens by hearing, then one's real life begins, one's actual life, connection with Krishna through one's relationship. And then bhakti, Shraddha, Rati, Bhakti, Anukramishruti. And how does it happen? Just by hearing, in the association of devotees. In fact, all auspiciousness is available for those who hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. This is a way in which one becomes spiritually advanced and pious. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana. Punya shravana kirtana. Just by hearing, you get punya. That's pretty good. Right? And this is the purpose of life, Daivi Sampat, to accumulate this spiritually pious based punya. So, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many iconic stories, and one of them is about Prahlad Maharaj. And, of course, Prahlad Maharaj is the great pure devotee who was born into a demoniac family. That's kind of interesting unto itself. It's the normal trend is one's born into a family and takes up the same kind of mood and qualities as the parents. And that's what the demigods thought would happen when Hiranyakashipu's wife was pregnant, Kayadu. And Hiranyakashipu had gone off for more austerities, and at that time the demigods had made a strategical move to take over the demons, and they were succeeding, and they were able to capture Hiranyakashipu's wife, and they were taking her away, and their plan was to hold her in captivity until she gave birth, and then they would do away with the son, because they thought that was a super demon being born from it's a son of Hiranyakashipu, so the seed must be similar, and it must be demoniac. But an interesting thing happened as they were taking her away. Indra and the other demigods who had captured her encountered Narada Muni, and Narada Muni told them that no, actually it's a devotee in her womb. And the demigods immediately believed him because that's Narada Muni. And that's what demigods do when they come in contact with a spiritually advanced person, they take advice. And this Prabhupada describes in the Bhagavatam in 7.7.11. It yuktas tam vihayendro devarshir maneyan vachaha ananta priya bhaktyainam parikramya divam yayao. This is 7.7.11. Iti, thus, ukta, addressed, tam, her, vihaya, releasing, Indraha, the king of heaven, Devarishehe, of the saint Narada Muni, Manayan, honoring, Vachaha, the words, Anantapriya, for one who is very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhaktya, by devotion. Enam, this woman. Parikramya, circumambulating. Divam, to the heavenly planets. Yayao, returned. Translation. When the great saint Narada Muni had thus spoken, King Indra, being respectful to Narada's words, immediately released my mother. Because of my being a devotee of the Lord, all the demigods circumambulated her. Then they returned to their celestial kingdom. So Narada Muni speaking. How's the temperature in here? Do we need more air? It's too warm. Can we get more air or turn down the heat? Or both? We got nothing against air in here, right? Everyone likes air? Okay, good. So please see this scene that the demigods are taking away the wife of Hiranyakashipu. This is a military procedure. And then Narada comes along and he intervenes. And in the process, the demigods headed by Indra recognize Narada Muni and respect his words. And not only that, the same woman they were dragging away, they circumambulate because they can understand from the words of Narada that there's a great devotee within her womb. So they circumambulate her. So this is, they're taking this direction from Narada. And here's the purport. Although King Indra and the other demigods are exalted personalities, they were so obedient to Narada Muni that King Indra immediately accepted Narada Muni's words concerning Prahlad Maharaj. This is called understanding by the parampara system. What's it called? Understanding by the parampara system. What's it called? Understanding by the parampara system. What's it called? Correct. Yeah, this is an important point. This understanding by the parampara system. And this is an important, a vital aspect of advancing in spiritual life, or for that matter, in any discipline. One has to take expert advice. Otherwise, if one's simply an upstart and wants to begin over and question everything that's taking place, one won't make advancement, and one won't even be hired in any company in Silicon Valley, will they? If you just question everything. So if one finds the proper authority and then submits oneself to the parampara, what's being passed down from the authority, one verifies the authority, and then takes that knowledge, then one gets perfect knowledge. This is something that is prominently brought out in the Tattva Sandarbha about ways of understanding the world. How do you get your knowledge? How do you know what you know? And how do you know that it's authorized? And just in the line of logic and the category of knowledge called epistemology, which means how do you know what you know? It's important to understand that there's such knowledge that is self-evident. It proves itself. There has to, in every discipline, be a point at which you have knowledge that proves itself. Otherwise, what you get, according to the Greek philosopher Aristotle, is infinite regress. You can question everything. You can question every premise. You have to have an axiom at some point. He compares it to an army retreating and retreating and retreating, and at some point they have to stand their ground and actually fight. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought this up when he spoke with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and also Prakashananda Saraswati in saying that the Vedas are self-explanatory. They're self-effulgent. The Praman proves itself, and you have to accept it as truth. Now, Prabhupada brings up in the Ishopanishad, his lecture, which is transcribed there, I believe it was in Albert Hall in England, that you can test all the knowledge in the Vedas, but if you want to save time, you can simply accept it. And then he gives the example how the Vedas say that the stool of an animal is impure. In fact, if a human passes stool, he or she has to take bath right away because they are considered contaminated. But then the Vedas say that cow dung is pure. So it sounds contradictory, but actually cow dung is pure. It has purifying qualities to it. And similarly, the conch shell is a bone of an animal, but if you touch the bone of an animal, you're supposed to take bath also. It's considered impure, but the Vedas say conch shell's pure, other bones aren't. And there's ways in which one can then question everything, or one can accept the authority of the Vedas. And this is the process of understanding anything, coming to where the self-effulgent knowledge is, or finding who the authority is, and then taking that information. In some sense, dogma, or accepting something because it's presented to you. And who has a dictionary? You want to look up dogma really quick? Get the correct meaning of dogma. Microphone goes to the front row.
Hare Krishna. Dogma means a belief or set of beliefs that is accepted by the members of the group without being questioned or doubted. A belief or set of beliefs that is taught by a religious organization.
Is accepted without being doubted or questioned.
Or questioned.
Questioned or doubted. That, you have to have that practically everywhere. Of course, Prabhupada says, invites, you can question or doubt it, but then at a certain point you have to understand that there's an authority that is beyond reproach, and we take that as the Vedic evidence that comes down. What else?
There's more, and it says, something held as an established opinion, especially a definitive authoritative tenet, a code of such tenets, a point of view or tenet, put forth as authoritative without adequate grounds.
Yeah. Have you ever been asked to accept something like that in your studies? Where? In science? Anything? Any particular example? What is it? Here, tell the audience.
The sum of angles in a triangle equals 180 degrees.
Okay. And you accept that axiom, otherwise you're not going to be able to go much further in geometry, right?
Yes.
Unless you accept some of these things. And what else? Wait. Yeah, take the mic.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Okay. What else? We have lots of them.
Newton came up with his laws of motion, different laws of motion, but later they found anomalies where that cannot be applied. So they came up with another set of laws which are contradictory to each other. Like the gravitational force, the bigger bodies act like one kind and the subatomic particles act in another way. So they are both axiomatic and even contradictory to each other.
Axiomatic and contradictory. Okay. So we encounter this everywhere, and part of the Vedic culture is Acharya Van Purusho Veda, that in order to have knowledge, proper knowledge about the spiritual world, one has to take the parampara system. One has to accept the Acharya system, that there is a way in which true knowledge is passed down through the parampara from one devotee to the next, and that's corroborated by the Vedic scripture. The acharyas speak according to scripture, and if they don't, then they're not acharyas. Shruti smriti paranadi panchatriki vidimbina aikantiki harer bhaktiru patayaiva kalpate. Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that any person who speaks in spiritual circles who doesn't quote from the Shruti, the Smriti, the Panchatriki Vidhi, etc., simply becomes a disturbance to society. Gaur Govinda Maharaj, I was just observing his disappearance day when I was in Mayapur, and I went there to speak. And Madhavananda Prabhu, who's one of his disciples, said that Gaur Govinda Maharaj, one of his famous statements was that if you say things and you don't back them up with scripture, then don't claim to be my disciple. Don't call yourself my disciple if you don't quote scripture. So this is a very prominent part of the culture, and in the purport again, we hear this is called understanding by the parampara system. Continuing, Indra and the demigods did not know that a great devotee was in the womb of Kayadu, the wife of Hiranyakashipu, but they accepted the authoritative statements of Narada Muni and immediately offered their respects to the devotee by circumambulating the woman in whose womb he was living. To understand God and the devotee by the parampara system is the process of knowledge. There is no need to speculate about God and his devotee. One should accept the statements of a bona fide devotee and thus try to understand. So this is also something that Krishna says in the Gita, in the 13th chapter, 8th verse through 13. He describes the process of knowledge. How does one come to complete knowledge? And one of the aspects, out of 20 aspects of this process, beginning with, I'll just read the list: humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity. This is in Bhagavad Gita 13:8. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. Is there some curse on the first and second rows? Thank you. Please feel free to move up. So, isn't it interesting, the list of what is actually the process of knowledge? And in this list, because I'm specifically focusing on the concept of parampara, and Prabhupada mentions the spiritual master, in the purport he writes, the principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. As for acceptance of the spiritual master, that is essential. Because without the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual science. One should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, if he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advanced without the disciples following the regulative principles. Or the regulative principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. This is just a very interesting aspect of the process of devotional service. Yasya devi para bhaktir yatha devi tatakarao tasyaite katitahyarta prakashanti mahatmanaha. The Shastra says that to one who has implicit faith in Krishna and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. If one doesn't have that connection and doesn't have that faith, then even one may be a great scholar and study the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, but he or she will come up with all the wrong conclusions. So there's something transcendental about the process, and there's an internal spiritual connection that one develops through the process of connecting to the parampara. And I'll also mention that in the guidebook to pure devotional service, otherwise known as the Nectar of Devotion or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which outlines everything necessary to come to the point of pure devotional service, Rupa Goswami catalogs the 64 items of devotional service. And then he prioritizes some of them. And the first three, what does he say, are of primary importance in the very beginning. Out of 64, when one's beginning devotional service, Which three does he say are vital or the most important for the beginning of devotional service? Malini's saying deity worship, chanting Hare Krishna, and you're very correct in quoting these things because these are also prioritized. There's 5 items of devotional service which are listed not only in Nectar Devotion but also by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, it's the other way. He teaches Rupa Goswami, he puts it in Nectar Devotion. Chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping the deity, living in a holy place, associating with devotees, and reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees who are more advanced than oneself. That's particularly what he says. But there's 3 others. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Nectar Devotion, he lists 3 others that are of primary importance for the devotee beginning devotional service. How that devotee becomes connected. Those 3 things are that he should adau guru ashrayam. He says in the beginning one should take shelter of a guru. This is the culture, the Vedic culture. It's coming out from the Bhagavatam, just how Indra accepted Narada immediately. He said, okay, I accept what you say. And Prabhupada points out this is the system. And Krishna points it out also, that one should have this shelter of somebody coming through the disciplic succession who's connected. And one should take shelter there. What does it mean anyway? Adau Guru Vashram. In the beginning, one should take shelter of Guru. What does it mean? Your thoughts. Hansapriya.
I would think that I would not have the clear direction. Guidance would be lost. Probably wasting my time on trying things out and probably frustrated because not something that contains me or satisfied me would be achieved from that.
Okay.
So
Adi Leela, Volume 1, please. Yeah, so in the Adi Leela, Chapter 1, text number 34, which will be here in 20 seconds or less, or your money back from this class today. Prabhupada speaks about the importance of accepting a Adau Guru Ashrayam. In fact, the whole first chapter of the Adi Leela, which is the quintessential teachings of our Sampradaya, starts off with the spiritual masters. The way that Krishna comes to us through Guru. And Prabhupada writes in text number 35, one should always remember that a person who is reluctant to accept a spiritual master and be initiated is sure to be baffled in his endeavor to go back to Godhead. One who is not properly initiated may present himself as a great devotee, but in fact he is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on his path of progress towards spiritual realization, with the result that he must continue his term of material existence without relief. Such a helpless person is compared to a ship without a rudder, for such a ship can never reach its destination. It is imperative, therefore, that one accept a spiritual master if he at all desires to gain the favor of the Lord. The service of the spiritual master is essential. If there's no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. There's no difference between the spiritual master's instructions and the spiritual master himself. In his absence, therefore, his words of direction should be the pride of the disciple. Now here's the part that I related to what you just said, Hansapriya. Prabhupada continues, if one thinks that he is above consulting anyone else, including a spiritual master, he is at once an offender at the lotus feet of the Lord. Such an offender can never go back to Godhead. It is imperative that a serious person accept a bona fide spiritual master in terms of the Shastric injunctions. Vidanena means there's a process that Krishna accepts. This is called Vidanena. Sri Jiva Goswami advises that one not accept a spiritual master in terms of a hereditary or customary social and ecclesiastical convention. One should simply try to find a genuinely qualified spiritual master for actual advancement in spiritual understanding. So there's a way that I don't consider that my speculation is going to lead me in the right direction. Therefore, I take shelter. But take shelter of whom? The Shastra says, Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jignasu Shreya Uttamam Shabde Parisha Chanishnatam Brahman Upashramashrayam. The Shastra says, therefore, and the therefore follows the fact that one is lost in this material world in samsara. Therefore, one should Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta, one should take shelter of a guru. Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jignasu Shreya Uttamam, one should inquire about what? Shreya Uttamam, what's the ultimate good in life? You should ask about that. Try to find out what's the best, what's the most important thing for me to attain. And then the qualification is given, Shabde Parichanishnatam, that person has taken a dip in the ocean of transcendental knowledge. Shabde Parichanishnatam, and is Brahman Upashramayashrayam, is completely serious about the process of spiritual life. So if one doesn't, one's like a ship without a rudder. People can speculate about so many things, but until one actually finds a person who's tied to spiritual knowledge, their life is tied to spiritual knowledge, their life is tied to an acharya who's tied to another acharya, and then take shelter there, then one's left to one's own speculations. Thank you. What else? What does it mean to take shelter? As Rupa Goswami says, Adau Guravashram, in the beginning, take shelter of Guru. Yes.
It's also there from Srimad Bhagavatam, the analogy that Nrideha Madhyam Sulabham Sudurlabham Plavam Sukalpam Guru Karnadharam Mayanukulina Bhasvateritam Pumam Bhavatim Nataresa Atmaha. It says that body, human body is, the analogy is a beautifully constructed boat, and the captain of that ship or a boat is spiritual master. So without the guidance of a spiritual master, one can keep rowing and rowing without reaching the shore. So
nice you brought in that analogy, and actually it's something that's specifically quoted by Srila Vishwanath. That verse is quoted by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in relationship to the importance of accepting a spiritual master to chant Hare Krishna. I'll read it to you in just a minute. So, well-placed verse. Nrideha Madhyam Sulabham Sadulabham Plavam Sukalpam Guru Karnadaram. The Guru is the Karnadara. And you find that same statement at the very end of the first canto in 15 seconds or less, or your money back from this seminar. 10, 9, 8, 7. So what's happening in the first canto, first chapter, is that the sages in Naimasaranya are taking shelter of Guru. It's such a nice thing. And they mention what his qualifications are. They say, Bhruyu snignasya shishyasya guruvo gurumapyuta. He said, you're very gentle. You're a gentle person, and therefore all your gurus have given their blessings. You can see when somebody's given blessings in some science because they've been submissive to it, they've been serious about it. And especially in spiritual life, when somebody becomes blessed by many years of service and surrender and submission, that person has something to offer. So Sudha Goswami was blessed by his gurus, and therefore the sages at Naimasaranya are glorifying him. Shaunaka is glorifying, he's seniormost. And he tells at the end of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam that, and I quote, 1:22, Twamna sandarshito tatra dustaram nistirsatam kalim sattvaharam pumsam karnadhara ivarnavam. We think that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as captain of the ship, for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of a human being. Karnadara. That means the captain. Karnadara Ivarnavam. They accept him as captain of the ship. So you quoted that verse. It just gives an analogy, a practical thing. Don't get on a boat if you don't know what you're doing and try to sail it yourself. You'll sink. It's very dangerous. I used to sail when I was a kid because my father built his own boat. It's called an El Toro. We went on Lake Merritt. You know where that is? It's in Oakland. He kept his boat over there, and then he'd take us out. We had to wear life jackets. We didn't know why. We complained. But there was a lot of safety things. And then we were out there one day, and there were ambulances and everything, and some kid had drowned out there. Then we took it seriously. They were just out in a little boat, and the boat capsized, kid drowned. And that happens. You have to be really careful. So you go out in a boat, you're going to cross the ocean even. You better take somebody along with you who knows what they're doing. Adau Guravashrayam. In the beginning, one should take shelter. Guravashrayam.
I was just thinking, like, taking shelter of Guru, even if one wants to, but in previous ages, how it was so difficult. Because most recently, what happened is one of the topmost atheistic political leader in India, who's in his 90s, suddenly his heart changed in the past few years, and he has adopted, like he is writing on Ramanujacharya, very authentically presenting the Vaishnava philosophy. So many people's hearts have changed because of that. So I was watching that, and even in the teachings of Ramanujacharya, there is no place for women. Like you take a stotra or something, and a bijakshara comes, and suddenly women are rejected. Like women are not allowed, or who is not a brahmana, they are not allowed. Like that, like so many restrictions, and even in Madhva's philosophy, it's like that. But even today, there was one devotee who used to come to ISV, and I was just talking to him. He was a Sri Vaishnava. How do you take initiation? Can you become a guru if you have the qualification? And he said, oh no, nobody can become a guru. Only if you are born in that family that Ramanujacharya has selected, then only you can give initiation. And suddenly I became like so grateful that how Prabhupada broke everything, and he really practiced what we just read, saying that one should accept initiation not from a seminal guru, but anybody who practices the principles of Krishna consciousness. So I was just thinking, if Prabhupada was not there, there is no scope, being a woman and being unqualified and non-dvijas and people who are not born in Brahmana families. So I'm so grateful, because now when I chant Gayatri, I feel that I'm not qualified, because Prabhupada gave us the qualification. So even if I had desired in previous ages, if the situation was not that Prabhupada was there and Panchatattva gave that thing, it would have been impossible. So I think now it's more necessary to take shelter when the facility is available and go back to Godhead. Thank you.
Well, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kena Noi Ye Krishna Tattva Veta She Guru Hoy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu emphasized that a guru is somebody who knows the science of Krishna consciousness. However, I don't know if it's so true that you would have difficulty at a different time. It may be a different context altogether, because there's a way in which Krishna always extends himself to the living entities in various ways. Naivo payantyapachitim kavayasta vesha brahma yushapi kritam rida muda smaranta yontar bahistanubrutam ashubhan vadhunvan acharya chaitya vapusha swagatim vyanakti. Uddhava says that he's expressing his gratitude to Krishna, and he says that who could express enough gratitude to you? Even if you had a lifetime of Brahma, that kind of ayu, you had one lifetime of Brahma, still, if I had that, I wouldn't be able to express enough gratitude to you Why? He says, because you always extend yourself to the living entities to guide them as guru. How? Acharya Chaitya. He says externally as the Acharya and internally as the Chaitya Guru, the Guru within the heart. After all, Krishna is giving intelligence. And Prabhupada points out in 10.10 in the Bhagavad Gita that even if one's not intelligent enough to take advantage of a spiritual master, Krishna will help from within the heart if one is sincere and give the intelligence how one could come to him. And in other contexts, in various societies where there would be a system where the man would be, a husband would be so qualified that the woman would take shelter of the husband, who would become guru. And when the husband was making advancement, the wife would make advancement also. I mean, it's still true in relationships when somebody's attached to somebody and they have different roles. If one is taking the lead in making advancement, the other one also comes along. So, and also you said Prabhupada broke everything, but I know what you meant, but maybe he followed the instructions of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu, in a sense, broke many things in the sense that there were very ways in which socially people were restricted and followed sort of a... Is that me? I had to make sure I turned mine off. Because if your phone goes off in class, oh good, mine's on airplane mode. You have to buy a set of Chaitanya Charitamritas. But it's only $100, so don't worry. In fact, turn your phones on if you have them. Yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made sure that devotees understood who was advanced, not by birth, but by qualities. In fact, he exalted Haridas Thakur as the Namacharya. And even though during that time, in that society, Haridas Thakur wasn't allowed in the Jagannath temple, interestingly. And Rupa Goswami, we're Rupanugas, he's our main acharya, but he also didn't go in the temple. He was an outcast. So your point is well taken on that. Adel Guruvashrayam means why one first takes shelter of Guru. What does it mean?
Which also Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshati te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Krishna is also saying that you inquire from a spiritual master submissively so that he can show you the truth or the tattva. I was listening to His Holiness Gaur Govind Swami Maharaj, and in his lecture he was explaining about this word tattva. Because many times we read many of the scriptures, but what is apparent in the instruction may not be the truth, actual truth. So to understand the actual truth, what actually Krishna meant, you should take shelter of a guru who can explain you. And the context was given about the Yaksha asked some questions to Yudhishthir Maharaj about who is a Sukhi person, the happiest person. And then Yudhishthir Maharaj gave so many responses, which if you read the responses, apparently they may seem that this is incorrect, but what actually he meant was only given in the commentary of the acharyas. So, so to understand something in tattva, you need to approach a spiritual master who can explain them to you in truth.
Okay. So, yes?
To me, it's just like giving up your own endeavor, because it's, mental speculation will never lead to any conclusion. Because if you keep on trying, once you know that somebody has already achieved that stage, so better, give up, because otherwise life is going to be over soon. So That's one thing. Then another one, I was just thinking that the speculative knowledge you refer to here and there, it never settles. You could refer it tomorrow, then you again say, oh, it may be true or not. You still keep on looking at it, and a few days later, you again started doubting the same thing. But once you're under a shelter, you say, that's what it is, period.
Yes, coming to a point of accepting proper authority, and that means also accepting a philosophy in life. If you want to get through the various changes of material nature, and there are various shifts that take place regularly, one has to have a steady philosophy to follow. Just like if you're an investor, you have to have one philosophy and stick to it. So many people who, just as an example, investors, they'll come into the marketplace and end up buying high and selling low because most people don't stick to a particular philosophy, they just speculate. Others who say they have a steady philosophy of investing, and they say dollar cost averaging, which is an age-old philosophy that you go on buying regularly, whether the market's up or the market's down, because when it's up, you're buying fewer shares at a higher price, and when it's down, you're buying more shares at a lower price, and you just do it regularly over time, and understand you have the philosophy that over time the market's going to trend up. The point is that you can't speculate, you have to stick to one particular philosophy. And the philosophy in life that's given through the Guru Parampara means Dehi no sminyata dehe komaranyo varanjara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyate. You have to become dhira. Means you have to become steady no matter what the situation is with your external body, and know the difference between the body and the soul, dhira, and be unwavering in the process of devotional service. Yes.
So I remembered a verse, Brahmanda Brahmite Kon Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi by Bhakti Lata Bij. And the verse says that one who's very fortunate by the mercy of Guru and Krishna gets the Bhakti Lata, or the seed of devotional service. So also in the Bhagavad Gita it said, by the humble one has to submissively serve the Guru. And by submissively serving the Guru, what's in their heart, their blessings and mercy comes and flows to us, and by that we can approach Krishna, and by Krishna's mercy we also get a guru whom we can take shelter of and follow instructions and anchor onto. And that was my point. And this is from Aditi Mataji. And
wait 1 second before you go on. Just that it's a very important point that you brought up from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that by the grace of Krishna one gets Guru, and by the grace of Guru one gets Krishna. Or by the grace of Guru one gets Krishna, and by the grace of Krishna one gets Guru. There's this relationship. Krishna empowers people to help others come to him. Therefore, in the first chapter of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami describes 3 different kinds of gurus, 3 different categories of gurus. Let's name them. What's one category? The first one that he names. Vartmana Pradakshaka Guru, the one who shows one the path. And what's the example that he gives in the text of the first chapter about somebody? It's a very unusual kind of Vartmana Pradakshaka Guru that someone had. Who was it? Bilvamangal Thakur. And who was his Vartmana Pradakshaka Guru? His girlfriend. He was going to visit this girl, and he was going to a lot of trouble to go see her. That's a familiar story. Romeo and Juliet, it was just, which is sort of like the epitome of what happens in the material world. And he was one night climbing over a wall during a storm. He grabbed onto a rope, turned out it was a snake, went across the moat just to get there, grabbed onto a log, turned out it was a dead body, and so on. And when he got there, he looked bedraggled. And she said, "You went to so much trouble to see me. I'm just really a dead body." If you gave so much enthusiastic endeavor to see Krishna, you'd actually make advancement in your life. And when she told him that, he said, "Yeah, I should change my life. I should become a devotee." And he did. So he gives her credit as the Vartmana Pradakshaka Guru, the one who showed him the path. And then he names what other kind of guru? Shiksha Guru, one who it teaches one path of devotional service. This is vital for the chanting of Hare Krishna, that one's getting instruction regularly from a guru, somebody who's very learned in the science of devotional service and can instruct one about the path of devotional service, about the path of chanting Hare Krishna. In fact, Haridas Thakur says that as you're chanting Hare Krishna, you also have to constantly get what? Sambandha Gyan. You have to hear about your relationship with Krishna. Like this morning I was reading from the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, and it was what Prahlad Maharaj was teaching his classmates in school. And the essence of that teaching was that you're not your body. And that if you have knowledge, you can see that you're not your body. It doesn't take a lot of endeavor, but it takes proper knowledge. And one example that he gives is a geologist. Any geologists in here? Oh, too bad. Okay, so geology. My sister was a geologist. And whenever we'd go anywhere, she'd look around and she could identify, this is this is that. To look at all the rock formations, she said, this is probably came from this. There was an ocean here before, it moved. And a geologist can look at the external features of terra firma, the earth, and see what's below. In fact, a lot of people hire geologists for what? What is consistently the highest paying job for geologists? Not that any of you know because you're all engineers. Okay, so, Oil. Yeah, oil. So how do they know where oil is? They're trained. They know where to look. They look around, they can search, and they have ways of observing different land formations, say that this is where oil ends up. Down here, there's probably a well down there. And they know they say, drill here, it's down in there, right? So he gives this example. He said a geologist will be able to look at the earth and be able to tell where there's something valuable underneath. There's jewels in there. Other people will miss it. In fact, they won't even see. Diamonds don't even look valuable when you see them. They just look like an ordinary stone until they're taken out of the earth and polished and so forth. So he said, similarly, one who gets knowledge from a spiritual master and becomes trained in understanding that one's not one's body, but actually a spirit soul, begins to act differently in life, different priorities. The physical body is simply here today and gone tomorrow. It's just a short opportunity that we have to use this body. And he also points out, he gives us knowledge, does Prahlad to his classmates, that we also have a certain amount of happiness and distress in our lives, and you won't get more and you won't get less, because as soon as you get your body, it's already fixed up how much you're going to get because of your past activities. And this kind of knowledge gives one a way to maneuver through this world without becoming entangled, and also gives one the impetus to continue the process of devotional service, of chanting Hare Krishna. So Haridas Thakur said, you have to have not only the mantra, but you also have to have a guru to go along with it to teach you how to chant it. Because every day is a challenge with the body and mind. It always brings obstacles. And you have to continue hearing from your Shiksha Guru or gurus, because you can have more than one Shiksha Guru. And then what kind of guru does he mention? Diksha Guru means what? One who gives the mantra. And so There's the seed and there's the watering of the seed. The Shiksha Guru is like one who helps you water the seed, and the Diksha Guru is the one who gives you the seed. Which one's more important? Okay, all at once. Which one's more important? Both. They're equally important. And these are all, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, manifestations of Krishna's mercy. He appears in these different ways, localized, just for you. Just like on a telescope. There's a small end and a big end. Which end do you look into? Any astronomers here? Look in the small end. If you try to look in the big end, you won't see anything. So Krishna appears locally, in your own village, in your own neighborhood. Such and such becomes your guru, spiritual master, by Krishna's mercy, the internal potency of the Lord coming through parampara. It's an interesting point about that, because in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, 7:15-26, this verse appears. The spiritual master should be considered to be directly the Supreme Lord because he gives transcendental knowledge for enlightenment. Consequently, for one who maintains the material conception that the spiritual master is an ordinary human being, everything is frustrated. His enlightenment and his Vedic studies and knowledge are like the bathing of an elephant. Purport, it is recommended that one honor the spiritual master as being on an equal status with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Saksha Daritvena Samasta Shastrai. This is enjoined in every scripture. Acharya Mam Vijaniyat. One should consider the Acharya to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In spite of all these instructions, if one considers the spiritual master an ordinary human being, one is doomed. His study of the Vedas and his austerities and penances for enlightenment are all useless, like the bathing of an elephant. An elephant bathes in a lake quite thoroughly, but as soon as it comes on the shore, it takes some dust from the ground and strews it over its body. Thus there's no meaning to the elephant's bath. One may argue by saying that since the spiritual master's relatives and the men of his neighborhood consider him an ordinary human being, what is the fault on the part of the disciple who considers the spiritual master an ordinary human being? This will be answered in the next verse. But the injunction is that the spiritual master should never be considered an ordinary man. One should strictly adhere to the instructions of the spiritual master, for if he is pleased, certainly the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado, yasya prasada nagati kutopi. Which really interested me in the next verse. Did it you? I mean, how could we stop there after we heard that? Let's see what we got. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the master of all other living entities and of the material nature. His lotus feet are sought and worshipped by great saintly persons like Vyas. Nonetheless, there are fools who consider Lord Krishna an ordinary human being. Purport. The example of Lord Krishna as being the Supreme Personality of Godhead is appropriate in regard to understanding the spiritual master. The spiritual master is called Sevaka Bhagavan, the servitor personality of Godhead. And Krishna is called Sevya Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is to be worshipped. The spiritual master is the worshipper God, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the worshipable God. This is the difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another point, Bhagavad Gita, which constitutes the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is presented by the spiritual master as it is, without deviation. Therefore, the absolute truth is present in the spiritual master. As clearly stated in text 26, Jnana Dipa Prade, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives real knowledge to the entire world, and the spiritual master, as the representative of the Supreme Godhead, carries the message throughout the world. Therefore, on the absolute platform, there is no difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If someone considers the Supreme Personality, Krishna, or Lord Ramachandra, to be an ordinary human being, this does not mean that the Lord becomes an ordinary human being. Similarly, if the family members of the spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, consider the spiritual master an ordinary human being, this does not mean that he becomes an ordinary human being. The spiritual master is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, And therefore, one who is very serious about spiritual advancement must regard the spiritual master in this way. Even a slight deviation from this understanding can create disaster in the disciples' Vedic studies and austerities. 8th canto, first part. In 20 seconds or less, or your money back, or a free set of Bhagavatams. Is that what I'm looking for? Maybe it's 9th canto. Can you bring 9th canto too, please? Thank you. You know what I'm going to look at, don't you? You know why I got the 9th canto. Is this the first part? Oh my goodness. Okay. Inconvenience regretted. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Moving on, I'll find it in a minute. Okay, yes?
I have a comment from the internet.
Yes, from
This-
Aditi.
Yeah,
Aditya.
Aditi.
Aditi.
Aditi Mataji. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for such a great class. I correlated one of your comments with my own personal life. If one doesn't have that special Krishna's mercy, he will take out wrong conclusions even after reading the Bhagavad Gita many times. I've seen my father reading Bhagavad Gita many times, but till date he never accepts that all truth is written and mentioned about Krishna. However, my mother reads Bhagavad Gita only once and realized that the fact, if one surrenders to Krishna, only then one's life will be successful. Now I have seen her visiting the temples and gifting Bhagavad Gita to many of her relatives, and most of the time saying that one should read Bhagavad Gita even if one wants ultimate happiness, of life. So I was just thinking that it is all by the mercy of Krishna to who should come close to him and who shouldn't, even after one reads an authorized scripture many times. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Aditi. Hare Krishna. Good to hear from you. Krishna says in the Adi Purana that one who says he's my devotee is not my devotee, but one who says he's the devotee of my devotee, he's my devotee. That's another principle in the process of devotional service, which is brought up, see if I can do this again and not find something really quick, in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, near the end of this Gita, there's mentioned that by Sanjaya, that he's observing what's happening on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And this is the power of the parampara. Okay, I'm doing it again. You know where it is? You know where it is? Here, find it. It's in the last few verses. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Lord Chaitanya accepting a spiritual master. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's in purport, yeah. Okay, let's see what you got. Okay, this is verse 75, 1875. By the mercy of Vyas, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who is speaking personally to Arjuna. Purport. Vyas was the spiritual master of Sanjaya, and Sanjaya admits that it was by Vyasa's mercy that he could understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one has to understand Krishna not directly, but through the medium of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the transparent medium, although it is true that the experience is still direct. This is the mystery of the disciplic succession. When the spiritual master is bona fide, then one can hear Bhagavad Gita directly as Arjuna heard it. There are many mystics and yogis all over the world, but Krishna is the master of all yoga systems. Krishna's instruction is explicitly stated in Bhagavad Gita, surrender unto Krishna. One who does so is the topmost yogi. This is confirmed in the last verse of the 6th chapter, Yoginam Api Sarvesham. Narada is the direct disciple of Krishna and the spiritual master of Vyas. Therefore, Vyas is as bona fide as Arjuna because he comes in the disciplic succession, and Sanjaya is the direct disciple of Vyas. Therefore, by the grace of Vyas, Sanjaya's senses were purified, and he could see and hear Krishna directly. One who directly hears Krishna can understand this confidential knowledge. If one does not come to the disciplic succession, he cannot hear Krishna. Therefore, his knowledge is always imperfect, at least as far as understanding the Bhagavad Gita is concerned. In Bhagavad Gita, all these yoga systems, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, are explained. Krishna is the master of all mysticism. It is to be understood, however, that as Arjuna was fortunate enough to understand Krishna directly, so by the grace of Vyas, Sanjaya was also able to hear Krishna directly. Actually, there's no difference between hearing directly from Krishna and hearing directly from Krishna via the bona fide spiritual master like Vyas. The spiritual master is the representative of Vyasadeva also. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, on the birthday of the spiritual master, the disciple conducts the ceremony called Vyasa Puja. So just at this point about how indirect becomes direct, and how Krishna mentions, as I said in the Adi Purana, that one should be the devotee of his devotee and not directly Krishna's devotee. This is the principle of Gaudiya Vaishnava, to become the servant of the servant of the servant. And then, paradoxically, the connection is direct, although indirect at the same time. Yes?
I was hearing in one of the lectures actually, once Prabhupada asked one of his disciples, what is the gift of a spiritual master? So at that time, the devotee replied many things actually. He was saying so many things. And then Prabhupada replied back by saying that the gift of the spiritual master is its transcendental knowledge. And if one understands that, then one will always remain obliged to him actually. So that was I wanted to share.
Very nice, thank you. Nimai Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was known as Nimai Pandit when he was a child. And he was not known as a great devotee. He was known as a great scholar and as a rascal. He used to play pranks all the time. In fact, once his father took him out of school because Lord Chaitanya's brother had left home and taken sannyas after associating with Advaita Acharya. And Lord Chaitanya's father reasoned that now that Nimai was becoming a scholar, he would also figure out that the material world is a temporary place, and he would take sannyas. So he said, no more school for you, you stay home. And then he really started, Nimai Pandit really started causing problems. He would go around the neighborhood, and people used to have these outhouses, not in the house, outside, and then when people would go in there, they would have to come outside to use the outhouse facility, so he would tie their doors shut so they couldn't get outside. And he'd wait until they start banging on the doors, and he and his friends would laugh and run away. And sometimes they would dress up, a couple of them, like a little bull, and they'd go into the fields, the agricultural fields, and start destroying everything. And when the owner came out, raising an alarm, they would run away and so forth. And then there was a moment in which Nimai sat on these rejected pots that were considered contaminated. And when his mother came out and explained to him that he shouldn't do that, he said, "What's the difference between one pot and another? It's all just Brahman." And he said, "Where are you getting this from?" And she began to explain to him the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, that there's actually a way in which there are different energies that the Lord has. And some of them are pure and some of them are considered impure. And he said, "Well, how am I supposed to know all of this? You took me out of school." And one of the neighbors said, "Who is this? Who is the enemy who has told you to take him out of school?" And soon afterwards, Nimai Pandit's father relented and put him back in school. In any case, he was such a great scholar that he defeated, as we know, the Digvijay Pandit, whom everyone else in Nadia was afraid of. They all, on some pretense, left town because they knew he was coming and they didn't want to debate with him because they knew they'd lose. But Nimai stayed there and defeated him. He became such a great hero. And the devotees used to pray that, "Please let Nimai become a devotee, because then we'll really have a powerful Sangha. If he becomes a devotee, then we can really spread Krishna consciousness." Little did they know that he was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But unless he wants somebody to know him, then they can't be known. Only by his consent can somebody know him. Nayama pravachanena labhyo na medaya na bahuna shutena. Yami vaisha vrinute tena labhyas tasyaisha esha rafinute tanum swam. He reveals himself to those whom he himself chooses. Now, he went away to Gaya because his father passed away, and he used to perform the Shraddha ceremony. And then the place to go for that is in Gaya. So when he went to Gaya, on the way there, he had a fever, and it wouldn't go away. His followers said, "What should we do?" And he said, "Just sprinkle on my head the water that's washed the feet of a brahmana." So they did that, and then he immediately became better. Preliminarily showing how much important as the devotee. In fact, this is brought up in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings later on to Sanatana Goswami. When he's teaching about devotional service, he brings up dozens of verses over and over again, which says that the preliminary and the maintaining and the ultimate stage of devotional service is by association of advanced devotees. Naisam matistavaru kramangrim srishartyanarta pagamo yadartaha mahiyasam padarajo bhishekam nishkinchananam navranita yavad. This verse comes in the Bhagavatam, explains that unless one takes the dust from an advanced devotee, it means take shelter of a pure devotee, then one can't advance in devotional service. The prime cause of advancing in devotional service is taking shelter of a devotee of the Lord. So, I'm going to read you a little bit about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's going into Gaya, because he took shelter there. Although he's Krishna himself, and even when Krishna comes, he takes shelter of a spiritual master. Who is Krishna's spiritual master? Correct. Sandipani Muni. Now here we are in chapter 17 of the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as I already mentioned, had journeyed to Gaya. And we're taking up after he's in Gaya, if you don't mind. By the divine will of the Supreme Lord, at that moment, Sri Ishvarapuri arrived at that place. On seeing Sri Ishvarapuri, Sri Gaurasundar respectfully offered him obeisances. Ishvarapuri was also delighted to see Gaurachandra, and he happily embraced him. In the ecstasy of meeting each other, they both became soaked with tears of love. The Lord said, "My journey to Gaya has become successful the moment I was able to see your lotus feet." If one offers oblations to the forefathers in a holy place, then the forefathers are delivered. But one delivers only he to whom the oblation was offered. By seeing you, however, millions of forefathers are immediately freed from material bondage. Therefore, holy places are not equal to you, for you purify even the holy places. And of course, you all know this famous verse, Bhavad vida bhagavatas tirta bhuta swayam vibho tirta kurvanti tirtani svantakstena gadabrita. In this verse, Yudhishthira tells Vidura, who was a pure devotee, that you're a holy place personified because you carry Krishna within your heart, and you purify even the holy places wherever you go. So the pure devotee is the repository of Krishna's internal potency, and he can purify everyone. So even more important than association with Krishna is association with the devotee of Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes an interesting comparison. In the Shastra it says that one, for men and women, the free mixing of men and women is very dangerous in the material world. And I won't go into a lot of details on that. Just take my word for it, or you already know. Therefore, the Vedic culture is really designed, the whole Varnashram system is designed so that one can come to a gradual realization about not being attached to the bodily conception of life, and especially the opposite sex. Pumsa striya maitundi bhavamitam tayor mitu hridaya grantamahu atogriya kshitra sutata vitar janasya moho yamaham mameti. A man becomes attracted to a woman becomes attracted to a man, then they join together, and then the next thing you know, they're at Home Depot. And that's a disaster. So there's a way in which the Shastra says that, okay, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that growing on this principle that for a man to freely mix with woman is dangerous. But much worse than that is for him to associate with a man who's attached to a woman in an inordinate way. So he says in the same way, association with Krishna is good, but even better is associating with somebody who's attached to Krishna. Please deliver me from the ocean of material existence. I surrender myself unto you. Who's speaking? That's right. He's speaking to his spiritual master. This is the language of somebody and how they approach the spiritual master. And some people they wonder, well, how is it done? Well, it's right here. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's setting the example. There, please deliver me from the ocean of material existence. I surrender myself unto you. Sangsara samudra hoite udaraha more e ami deha samar pilana tomare. Then he says, I beg that you make me drink the nectar of Krishna's lotus feet. Ishvara Puri then said, listen, dear Pandit, I know without doubt you are an expansion of the Supreme Lord. Can anyone other than an expansion of the Supreme Lord possess the extraordinary learning and characteristics that you have? I had an auspicious dream last night, and today I've obtained the fruits of that dream. O Pandit, I'm telling you the truth. I'm feeling great ecstasy every moment since I've seen you. From the time I saw you in Nadia, my heart has had no other attraction. I'm speaking the truth, nothing else. When I see you, I feel the happiness of seeing Krishna. Hearing his beloved Ishvara Puri's truthful words, Lord Chaitanya smiled and said, it is my great fortune. In this way, the two exchanged many other pleasing words, which will be described in the future by Veda Vyas. The Lord then took leave of Ishvara Puri and went to offer oblations to his forefathers. The Lord went to the Palguni River and offered oblations to the forefathers with sand. Then the Lord went to Preta Gaya on top of the hill. Sri Sachinandana offered Shraddha at that place and then satisfied the brahmanas there with sweet words. After duly delivering his forefathers, the Lord happily went to Dakshina Manasa. He next went to Sri Ram Gaya, where he had previously performed Shraddha in his incarnation as Ramachandra. In this incarnation, he again performed Shraddha at that place. Thereafter, Lord Gaurahari went to Yudhishthir Gaya. Yudhishthir Maharaj had previously performed Shraddha there. Out of affection for Yudhishthir, Gaura also performed Shraddha there. All the brahmanas, it's also a nice description about going to holy places. As each place you go, you remember out of affection. And if you don't have affection, you develop affection by going there. The different personalities, the great personalities who were there. Like we were recently in Jagannath Puri, about 100 of us. And we went to the place where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya used to live and where he met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's palpable. When you go there, then you remember those personalities. And even you'll see little artifacts like a little lota that was there at the time. And these things have great spiritual significance and remind us, there's stimuli that remind us of our relationship with all these great devotees. So you see Mahaprabhu also going around Gaya and he's remembering Yudhishthir. He performed some service here, all performed some service here. And if one's lucky enough to connect oneself with a devotee who already has these impressions, love for his spiritual master, love for the different processes of devotional service, it's infectious. So if you get around somebody who has this, if you don't have it, but you just follow them around like a little puppy, then somehow or other, by osmosis, you start getting these things. It's in the tone of their voice, it's the way they jump up at a certain time, it's the steadiness of their hand or a look in their eye when they're doing their special puja or taking charnamrita with a special relish, or the way they sing a particular song. These impressions are so powerful, and they come about by association with devotees. And so, Adao Guru Vashrayam, one should take shelter of a devotee who is a repository of these kinds of impressions, and one should follow in the footsteps of such a person. You can't jump ahead and try to go directly to Krishna. Krishna doesn't like that. This is called Vidanena. There's a process through which one becomes dear to Krishna. And the way to do that is to become attached to Krishna's tadiya. Tadiyanam samarchanam. What is the highest worship of Krishna? It's not worshiping Krishna, interestingly enough. It's worshiping those things that are dear to Krishna. And there's nothing more dear to Krishna than his devotees. So if one worships the devotee, it's the philosophy of love me, love my dog. If you meet somebody, where do you all live? Which part of the Bay Area do you live in? From where? Okay, so you're walking in Houston, Texas. Does anybody there have any dogs in Houston? A few dogs there. Yeah, so you're walking along. If you meet a stranger, if you walk right up to them and say, hey, how are you doing? What kind of work you do? Or something like that. They may, especially in this day and age, in Houston, you might get shot. Because it's okay to carry guns around. It's Texas. Pretty soon we might all be able to carry guns around. It might be legal. So, sorry about my side commentary here. But if you meet somebody with a dog, and this is just a fact, you can try it next time you're walking around anywhere, because there's dogs everywhere. And you meet somebody walking a dog, and you say, what a nice dog. What kind of dog you got there? Here, Poochie, Poochie. And you talk to the dog first. The people automatically and I see it all the time. I see people who are dog lovers when they're walking along and they go, oh, look at the doggy. And the people immediately, they're like family members. They're immediately family members. But if you just walk up to them directly and try to make a relationship, it's like, well, what are you trying to do here? What's going on? It may not work. But love me, love my dog. And so the dogs, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I'm the dog of my spiritual master. Where do I live? On the back porch. That's where he lives. He said, tie me up back there, and what'll I eat? Whatever you don't eat. Whatever you're done with, you just throw it over the side. I'll eat that. That's the mood of the disciple. And when one becomes the dog of Krishna's, one appreciates Krishna's servant, then the same thing happens. Then immediately one becomes recognized by Krishna. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going around Gaya. All the Brahmins sat there around the Lord and directed him in the procedures of the Shraddha ceremony. Things don't change either. You'll hear from the description going around the holy places. There are all these pandits who come around and say, here, I'll show you how to do it. I know how to do it. I'll show you anyway, and it's going to cost you. As the Lord performed Shraddha and offered oblations in the water, all the resident Brahmins grabbed the offerings and ate them. Sri Sachinandan smiled on seeing this, and thus the Brahmanas were freed from all material bondage. The Lord next offered Shraddha at Uttaramanasa. He then went to Bhima Gaya. Thereafter the Lord performed the prescribed rites at Shiva Gaya, Brahma Gaya, and finally at Shodasha Gaya. While at Shodasha Gaya, the Lord faithfully offered Shraddha with 16 ingredients on behalf of all his forefathers. Thereafter the Lord took bath at Brahmakund and offered oblations at Gaya Shira. The Lord then personally worshipped Lord Vishnu's footprints with flower garlands and sandalwood paste. After completing his offerings of Shraddha and satisfying the Brahmanas at all the recommended places, the Lord returned to his room. After he took some rest, the Lord sat down to cook. As soon as the Lord finished cooking, Sri Ishvarapuri arrived there. Ishvarapuri's head was rolling back and forth in ecstatic love as he arrived there chanting the names of Krishna. The Lord immediately left the kitchen and, after respectfully offering obeisances, he seated Ishvarapuri comfortably. Ishvarapuri smiled and said, "Listen, O Pandit, I see I've come at the right time." The Lord replied, "It will be my good fortune if you accept your meal here today." Ishvarapuri smiled and said, "Then what will you eat?" The Lord replied, "I will cook again." Ishvarapuri then said, "What is the need for cooking again? Divide whatever you have in 2 portions." The Lord smiled and said, "If you really want to please me, then eat whatever I've cooked." And you see this, there's a spiritual master and disciple relationship. It's very sweet, actually. There's this kind of loving exchange that's going on between Mahaprabhu and his spiritual master. Mahaprabhu loves Srila Ishvarapuri, and Srila Ishvarapuri loves Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they have this relationship that is just, of course, they met previously and there was some exchange, but now it's coming to this point. "I'll cook again within a moment. You take your meal without hesitation." The Lord then gave his meal to Ishvarapuri and happily went to cook for himself. Ishvarapuri's mind never deviated from the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore the Lord bestowed such mercy on him. The Lord served Ishvarapuri with his own hands, and Ishvarapuri thus ate in great ecstasy. At that time, Rama Devi, the goddess of fortune, quickly cooked for the Lord while remaining unseen by all. Then after the Lord first fed Ishvarapuri, he happily ate himself. One who hears about the Lord taking his meal with Ishvarapuri will achieve the wealth of love of Krishna. It's all of you. The Lord with his own hands then smeared sandalwood paste on the body of Ishvarapuri. Who has the ability to describe the Lord's love for Sri Ishvarapuri? The Supreme Lord Sri Chaitanya personally visited the birthplace of Ishvarapuri. The Lord said, "I offer my obeisances to the village of Kumarahata, where Srila Ishvarapuri appeared." Lord Chaitanya cried profusely at that place and spoke nothing other than the name of Ishvarapuri. The Lord took some dust from the birthplace of Ishvarapuri and tied it in his cloth. The Lord said, "The dust from the birthplace of Ishvarapuri is my life, wealth, and living force." This is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, showing how the Adau Guravashrayam, we heard about what does it mean to take shelter of a Vaishnav. And he's showing this with heart and soul. He's considering the dust from the place where Srila Ishvarapuri, his foodstuff, Tandera charana sevi bhakta sanivas janame hoy. Eyabilash, there's the dust from the lotus feet of the devotees is my 5 kinds of foodstuffs. The Lord said, the dust from the birthplace of Ishvara Puri is my life, wealth, and living force. The Lord exhibited such affection for Ishvara Puri because he takes pleasure in increasing the glories of his devotees. The Lord said, I came to Gaya to offer oblations to my forefathers. Now that I have seen Ishvara Puri, my journey has become successful. On another day, the Lord went privately to Ishvara Puri and in sweet words requested him for initiation. Ishvara Puri replied, what to speak of mantra, I can give my life to you. Then, in order to instruct everyone, the Lord accepted the 10-syllable mantra from Ishvara Puri. The Lord then circumambulated Ishvara Puri and said, I fully surrender myself unto you. Please glance mercifully on me so that I may float in the ocean of love of Krishna. Hearing the Lord's words, Sri Ishvara Puri embraced him. The bodies of both became soaked with their tears and agitated due to ecstatic love. In this way, while bestowing mercy on Ishvara Puri, Sri Gaurahari remained in Gaya for a few days. So, there you have it. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu going to Gaya, and we find that before he went to Gaya and he found his spiritual master, Srila Ishvara Puri, he was a puffed up scholar. And when he came back, his mood had completely changed. He showed through his pastimes how it is, by taking shelter of a Vaishnav, one actually becomes fortified and enlivened in devotional service and transformed by the power of the association of the spiritual master. Any comments before I go to the next pastime? Because I got another one. It's a little shorter, but it's also a very profound recount of Gopakumar taking initiation. It's a slightly different circumstance. Yes. 10-syllable Gopal mantra. This is the pradhan, the main mantra of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, this Gopal mantra. It's mentioned in the Sri Brahma Samhita. Uvacha purutas tasmai tasya divya saraswati kama krishnaya govinda he gopi jani tibhi balabhaya priyavanir mantram te tasati priyam. So in that section where Divine Saraswati reveals a mantra to Lord Brahma, you'll find the mantra. Of course, these mantras have to be taken from a spiritual master. Just as much as the seeds from the banyan tree do not grow in themselves. They have to be picked up by the sparrows nearby, digested, and then once they're passed back out again, they grow. So similarly, these mantras, they have to be digested and passed down through the disciplic succession. Any other reflections from what I read so far about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taking initiation? Yes? Yeah.
Thank you. Hare Krishna Mahaprabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Just a very short one. Mantra Moolam Gurur Vakyam.
Mantra Moolam Guru
Gurur Vakyam. It is by chanting Sri Krishna as the Guru, Hare Krishna, that mantra. He becomes the Guru and gives the Vakyam in the heart. There are Mahavakyas and other things, and you are familiar with them. This Vakyam will be just apt for the circumstance, whatever circumstance one is going through. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. I'd like to be familiar with them. Krishna is the Adi Guru. He's the Adi Guru. All the others are his representatives. This is from the Sri Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Okay, so Gopakumar, this is relevant because Gopakumar was a simple cowherd boy. He was born in Vrindavan. And He didn't know anything about spiritual life. He had no guidance there. Simply tend the cows. And later on we find, there's a story within the story, he has a disciple. His disciple was a Brahmin from northern India. And he had received, actually, a mantra in a dream from his family deity, Kamakya Devi, who was a manifestation of Durga. His family worshipped a Durga deity. And she had come to him in a dream and given him a Krishna mantra. Said, you take this mantra. And it takes him on a journey, but he doesn't have any guidance except from the mantra. Wherever he goes, he chants the mantra and he gets guidance. It's very instructive in a way, because one should go on chanting one's mantra. First you get a mantra, and then you go on chanting the mantra. And Krishna will help. Krishna will help. But then he, by Krishna's arrangement, as Prikashori brought up earlier, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. By one's wandering in this universe, by the grace of Guru one gets Krishna, by the grace of Krishna one gets Guru, vice versa. And he met Gopakumar, did this young Brahmin, and Gopakumar was sent by Radharani, because in the spiritual world she saw this young Brahmin wandering without any guidance. And he said, sent Gopakumar to Vrindavan to intercept him, to meet him there, and to guide him back home, back to Godhead. And we find out from these stories actually how dear each living entity is to Krishna. He's observing the wanderings, as he says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshara junatishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudrani maya. I'm observing all your wanderings. But sometimes you can think, oh yeah, he just observes kind of in a non-interested way. But you find out from the Brihat Bhagavatamrita how interested he actually is in you. Very interested. In fact, when Gopakumar came back to Vaikuntha and met Lord Narayan said, so many ways I was trying to induce you to come back to Godhead. Normally he doesn't interfere with anybody's independence. He said, finally I became impatient after millions of lifetimes and you didn't pay any attention. I forced you to take birth in Govardhan. And there I gave you a mantra. And actually it was me who came as your spiritual master to give you the mantra. So this is revealed later on. But here's the circumstance in which Gopakumar tells his disciple that he first received the mantra and got his diksha. He's in the cow fields as a young boy with his other cowherd friends. They're tending cows and so forth. And he says, I became eager to know who this Lord of the universe was. Wait a minute. Sorry. Oops. Okay. Here we are. I'm the son of a Vaishya of Govardhan who made his living as a cowherd. As a young boy of that community, I used to tend my own cows. O best of learned Brahmanas, I stayed in the company of other boys there at Govardhan, here in Vrindavan, on the banks of the Jamuna, and at various other places in the district of Mathura. Now Gopakumar begins his story, which will continue till the end of the 6th chapter. He was born in a Vaishya community, in a family of cowherds. In the forest, we regularly saw a certain first-class Brahmana wandering from place to place. He was very renounced, and his body appeared like that of a god. He was always chanting the glories of Krishna. Sometimes he sang and sometimes he danced. Sometimes, absorbed in meditation, he chanted his mantra to himself, and sometimes he gave himself over to laughter. Sometimes he shouted or loudly sobbed, or stumbled and fell to the ground, or rolled about on the ground like a madman. Sometimes he fell unconscious, and lay like a corpse, the flood of his mucus, saliva, and tears turning the dust on the cow path into mud. Out of curiosity, we cowherd boys would often come look at him, but when he saw us in front of him, he would bow down to us with devotion. He would heartily embrace us and affectionately cover us with kisses as if we were his best friends. He was unable to give up our company. He was pleased with my services like giving gifts of milk products. One day, meeting me on the shore of the Jamuna, he embraced me and spoke in this way. My dear child, if you want to fulfill all your desires, please bathe at Keshi Ghat and then accept from me this mercy of the Lord of the universe. Commentary. Normally we consider the mercy of the Supreme Lord something intangible, but the saintly Brahmana called it this mercy as if it were a tangible object in front of them. He told Gopakumar, just take it from me, as if literally placing it in his hands. Thus, after I bathed, he imparted to me the same mantra you are chanting. Although he was fully satisfied in himself and indifferent to material things, he was the crest jewel of all compassionate souls. Commentary. Since Gopakumar and his student have been initiated into the same mantra, their relationship should become very friendly. When Gopakumar got his mantra, he should not have thought that this was his guru's way of reciprocating the gifts of buttermilk and yogurt. His guru, being fully self-satisfied, did not need this service. Only out of infinite compassion for the fallen souls did the guru show Gopakumar his mercy. He was about to explain the method of worshipping with the mantra, but as soon as he mentioned the object of meditation, he was overcome by pure love of God, became confused, and started crying like a woman separated from her lover. Commentary. Gopakumar's guru had the instructions for properly using the mantra just on the tip of his tongue. He was about to tell Gopakumar how to touch the body with the syllables of the mantra, how to meditate systematically on the meaning of the mantra, and all the other details for reciting the mantra in worship. But as soon as he started to describe the beautiful form of Sriman Madan Gopal, a sudden ecstasy caught hold of him, and crying like a lovesick woman, remembering her distant beloved, he lost his train of thought. When he regained normal consciousness, I was afraid to ask him anything. He stood up and went away, distressed, and after that he was nowhere to be found. Commentary. Having just received initiation, Gopakumar felt deep reverence for his spiritual master, and without first being spoken to, he dared not say anything. He feared he might have done something offensive to upset his guru, and thought that if he said anything wrong, his guru might start crying again. Why didn't the saintly Brahmana give the missing instructions asked? In his ecstatic mood, he was unhappy and distracted, so he went away, saying nothing more. And because he had no fixed residence, he was not to be found again. I had no idea what this mantra was I had received, what fruit its chanting would bear, and even how the mantra was to be practiced. Commentary. Gopakumar did not even know the name of this 10-syllable mantra. What the mantra meant to be sung out, was the mantra meant to be sung out loud or chanted quietly? Or was it a mantra at all? If it was powerful when chanted perfectly, what fruit would it bear? His guru had not told him that the mantra would fulfill all. His guru had told him that the mantra would fulfill all his desires, but that was vague. Until now, Gopakumar had never thought seriously about his ultimate desires and goals. Simply out of respect for the Brahmana's words, I constantly murmured this mantra in secluded places, unseen by others. I chanted it just out of curiosity. Commentary. Gopakumar, aware of his ignorance of the true nature of the mantra, was embarrassed to chant it in public, but it certainly fascinated him. By the influence of that great person, even such aimless chanting purified my mind, and I developed faith in the mantra. Commentary. Without scientific knowledge of its practice and significance, the young sadhaka, Gopakumar, could hardly have solid faith in the mantra. He was not firmly convinced of its efficacy, nor was he affectionately attracted to it. Nonetheless, his naive chanting purified his mind of lust, envy, and greed. Last verse. Contemplating my Guru's words, I understood the mantra to be the means for achieving the Lord of the universe. Thus, I became satisfied and absorbed in chanting. Commentary. Gopakumar's Guru had told him, accept the Supreme Lord's mercy. Remembering this, Gopakumar concluded that the mantra was meant for obtaining the favor of the Supreme Lord. This was a satisfying reason to take enthusiastically the chanting. So this is kind of a profound example of how Gopakumar received this mantra and didn't know what it was. But just the circumstances and the personality who had given it to him compelled him, out of curiosity even, to continue chanting the mantra. And his mind and senses began to become purified. And we find later how the mantra takes him back home, back to Godhead. And in the case of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just after taking initiation, you find his transformation also. And you'll read in the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita how he comes back to his guru and says, what kind of mantra did you give me? Because I'm going crazy. My whole personality is transformed. Is this the correct thing that's supposed to be happening? And so forth. So we hear these different contexts in which the devotees take shelter of a Vaishnava by Krishna's arrangement, and they receive Krishna's mercy. One of the ways that the mercy comes is through diksha, or receiving the mantra that's been passed down from one guru to the next in disciplic succession. And just to anchor to our original thought, that from which we've extrapolated many of these ideas, in the 7th canto, 7th chapter, 11th verse, when Indra and the demigods were stealing away the wife of Hiranyakashipu, they encountered Narada Muni, and Narada Muni told them that actually this woman is going to give birth to a pure devotee. And they accepted it. And Prabhupada writes in his purport, this is called understanding by the parampara. And he goes on to say that they, Indra and the demigods, accepted the authoritative statements of Narada Muni and immediately offered their respects to the devotee by circumambulating the woman in whose womb he was living. To understand God and the devotee by the parampara system is the process of knowledge. There is no need to speculate about God and his devotee. One should accept the statements of a bona fide devotee and thus try to understand. Thus try to understand. Okay, now we'll take some reflections. We have a few minutes left. Yes.
I actually had a question, Prabhuji, a
Okay.
quick one. But you just read how even the naive chanting relieved him of lust, envy, and greed. What was success? Means I know there are offenses and all that, but the naive chanting, but doesn't happen to us that very easily. All those three things doesn't go away by chanting the mantra. So
Well, keep chanting. It's a short life, and you have, well, you can say it's a long life also. It goes by pretty quickly, but just keep chanting. And this is the instruction that one should chant, and one should also chant under the shelter of Guru. That's part of the reason of giving this class in relationship to that concept. Also you find, will I find it? In very important commentary to the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is writing about a jamil. There is no other means of destroying the effects of these two offenses than continually chant the name while suffering appropriately for the offense. Some people may make the following proposition. Those offenders of the name who are without karma and jnana and who practice bhakti with hearing and chanting but have not taken initiation because they have not surrendered to the feet of Guru are still called Vaishnavas. The word Vaishnava is defined as the person who takes Vishnu as his object of worship, according to Panini's sutras. Thus Vaishnavas are those who have made Vishnu the object of worship by accepting initiation, but also those who make Vishnu the object of worship simply by worship, Simply, there is no other word to describe the two types of people, so the latter type of person is also should not fall to hell. However, he says, this is not correct because one cannot attain the Lord easily without Guru. And then he quotes Nrideham Adyam Sulabham Sadrulabham, about how the Guru is the captain of the ship. Therefore, it should be explained that there's no other way of attaining the Lord than becoming a devotee who has surrendered to the feet of Guru, who will be attained in another birth by the power of worship. As well, we have the example of Vajamil, but one who thinks, what is the benefit of taking the trouble to accept Guru? I will attain the Lord just by chanting the name. Will not attain the Lord, he says, because of the offense of offending the Guru. However, in this life or another life, if he surrenders to the feet of Guru after destroying his offense, he will then attain the Lord. That's not actually answering your question, but later on, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this purification comes to everybody in a particular way, and that sometimes it's delayed. He said, however, some devotees without offense who desire to attain a special prema are delayed in attaining the Lord. For instance, Jud Bharat took 3 lives to attain the Lord. And he compares also, as does Prabhupada in his commentary that follows this, it's just like a fruit growing on a tree. You have to wait till it manifests. You can't rush it. Anyway, the mantra works. Just keep doing it. Yes, Harivamsha Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. I'm really glad you brought this anecdote from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, because many times in situations, often the question comes, and when we preach also the question comes, does Krishna really want us? We really want him. Okay, in quotes, we really want him, but does he really want us? So this pastime and the way it is orchestrated, and in the end how Krishna faints when he sees Gopakumar coming and he's rolling on the dust and Balram is picking up. This is such like height of explanation that he is super sensitive and he wants us. And I was just connecting it with Shri Krishna Akarshini, the 6th symptom of pure devotional service, that Krishna is attracted to bhakti. And if the bhakti is there in the heart of the bhakta, it's not conditional, he is attracted. So thank you for bringing that point.
Yeah, Prabhupada mentions in the verse Srimvatam Swakata Krishna that Krishna desires for us to go back to Godhead more than we can ever desire. And also that expression of our desire comes out in our voice when we chant. We should listen for that when we chant. What is our level of sincerity? As Mahatma Prabhu likes to say, there's courtesy chanting, where you're just like, I finished this, but you're not really paying attention, and there's no emphasis in your voice that this is important to me even. But bhakti comes out in one's voice. It's an expression of love in prayer. And if we can actually find that and express it, then it attracts Krishna. He's already attracted. We're his part and parcel. But we're ignoring him. And really, turning our face around requires a little emphasis, a little sincerity. Vancha kalpadurvascha kripasanabhevacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo